This course is presented to you free of charge by TTJ Tech Services of www.ttjtech.biz and by Stir It Up of www.stiritup.com. And remember, stir is spelled with a U, not an I, so that's STURITUP.com. TTJ Tech Services and Stir It Up are pleased to offer this course to you to the glory of God and to the benefit of all those who listen. Praise God, and once again, welcome to our Tuesdays with TTJ session. You know, security is so important, and in this day and age where we are putting a lot of our data out there, now more than ever, perhaps, we really do need to discuss the options for staying safe in a digital world. But, you know, a lot of times we get those questions. Am I really safe? What do I need to do to keep my data and my identity safe and protected? And really, is there ever any way to do that? And then what about all of these rumors? Are my smart speakers really listening to me all the time? And are all of these, you know, and then there's, there's questions about, well, what if I don't use my devices for any kind of banking, for any kind of online shopping? Do I still need to even have a passcode? Why do I need to bother with that? And a lot's changed. A lot has changed over the years, right? When I was a kid in the 90s and we first started using computers, we thought it was ridiculous to use a password, and we didn't do it. You just didn't do it. Oh, we don't need that, And then when you came up with one, you came up with that really good password that was the same password for every account, but it was your pet's name or something. And I even remember one time a professional telling me when I started a job somewhere, and I was prompted to use a password on the operating system. He said to me, unless you've got the launch codes for the nuclear weapons. I mean, obviously he was joking, but he said, unless you've got the launch codes, you don't need to bother with this. And that was the way of thinking that prevailed for many, many years. But of course, we know better than that now, and we know how important it is to keep our data protected. And I will start out with a thesis statement that I will then come back around to at the end of this presentation today, before we take your questions and so on. And that thesis statement is that in the earthly sense, right, there is no unsinkable ship. Those of us, myself, others, who place our trust in God, we trust Him for protection, and we believe His word that we are protected. But in the earthly sense, there really is no unsinkable ship. There are some things, however, that would fall under the category of wisdom that we can do to increase the protection that we have, or to enhance that, I would say, to really help to keep our data secure. And those are the kinds of things that we're going to spend today talking about. And as I said, we're going to circle back to that at the end, and you'll see why. But there are some basic things that we believe that everyone should do. We want to talk about those. And we also want to talk about some additional options that are available to you. And as Apple users, of course, this begins with our Apple accounts and our Apple devices, because everybody on this call, I dare say, is an Apple user. And so right off the bat, we need to talk about protecting our devices. It is super important that you have a passcode and that you have a form of biometric security to back it up. And that means either Face ID or Touch ID. I'm kind of beyond, we used to try to, appease people and say, well, yeah, I understand, maybe, whatever. I'm kind of beyond that, to be honest with you. That's not a criticism of anybody, right? God loves you, we love you. It's not like that. But I want to tell you the truth. I want to be honest with you, and that's so important to me. And so I'm kind of beyond saying no, it really doesn't matter. No, you need to have a passcode on your device. You need to have the biometrics. The biometrics make it way easier, but they also add an additional layer of security. And there are many reasons in this day and age to do that. And I'm not going to go into all of those for the sake of time. Again, I trust God for his protection above all of this. But this is just kind of the wisdom, right? There are many reasons, whatever they may be, and however they may or may not fit you. And you may think, well, it doesn't matter, because I don't do banking. I don't, need that kind of security. There's nothing sensitive on my device. Um, but it's even just for the ability of somebody to get into your device and do other things to it. This is something, and then there's the fact that nowadays many of the features that you may choose to delve into will not even function without your device having that level of protection. So this is just a really good best practice to get into. Okay, you have um, door locks on your home, on your car, all that. This is kind of like that. It's just that is, as things have evolved, that's where we are. And the first step in that is, of course, your uh, passcode for your device, which um, they offer different options, as you may know, 4 digit, 6 digit, the alphanumeric. I recommend at least the 6 digit. I think that's a reasonable balance there. If you want to go alphanumeric, you
Point
can.
something out here, Matt. That I've had people say to me on more than one occasion from different layers of security, um, because of being blind and being out in public with their device. What if somebody snatches their phone after it's unlocked? Well, I mean, number one, that would be pretty lame for somebody to try to snatch somebody's phone, blind or otherwise. But without that passcode or Face ID of layer, because, and I'm pretty sure you were going to get to this, but I just want to ease people's mind that think about this. There is theft protection that you can activate on your phone now, number one. And number two, if they, even if they know that passcode, they can't get into your iCloud account, keychain, which is now called passwords, or anything else that you have locked with a passcode or a Face ID on your phone without knowing that passcode. Now, if they did so happen to see you punch it in and they can get to it, well, I mean, that's another thing in itself because somebody could snatch my phone and maybe see me typing my password if I'm in, you know, at Matt's church, but I could pick up Matt's phone, go into Find My, and wipe my phone immediately. So there's nothing that to me is not secure about that process that I just explained. I mean, if I missed anything, let me know.
Right. No, I agree with you, and good to hear you. I wasn't sure if you'd be able to, unmute or not, but how you doing?
Doing pretty good. Doing pretty good. I mean, I've
Good.
only been here
Good.
2 weeks and I'm already running the place. No, I'm joking.
Well,
But
no,
no, but yeah.
that's good. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, and these are the kinds of things people concern themselves with. But especially as a voiceover user, we have some additional layers of protection there because you can use screen curtain and things like that if it's really an issue for you. But even for somebody who's listening who's sighted, it's um, when you enter your password, yeah, try and make sure that you are aware of your surroundings, that nobody's
That and
uh
on top of it, it's not, I mean, I don't know anybody's situation, so I'm not trying to point fingers or judge anybody. But, working here and working around more blind people than I've ever been around in my life. Because as you know, I was raised in a sighted world, just like you were.
Right.
But they walk around with their phones, which is fine. But it's like earbuds or a Bluetooth headset is a foreign language because it's like, and I'm not even joking about this number. It's like one out of every five person has one. It's like it's a requirement for them to have their voiceover talk out loud. But that would be another layer of security is use earbuds or a Bluetooth headset. That way, when you do type in your password or you're getting a private text that can't nobody hear your conversation or your passing or your password.
And that's a very good point. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So there's a number of ways that we can enhance this protection, um, even above and beyond, because we can, use some of those things that are common sense, whether it's AirPods or some other headset or headphones or what have you. And then, of course, the biometrics, which we didn't even really get into yet, that enhances the security even more because most times you're not going to need to enter that passcode. You're going to be able to do it through Face ID or Touch ID on certain devices. And that is a very, very secure way of, um, locking your devices and protecting your devices. And I just remind you that now it is even possible to lock individual apps, and that's something that's never been possible until iOS 18. And there were certain apps that did it themselves, like for example your PayPal app, your medical apps. A lot of those apps were, they did require Face ID or a passcode, or maybe I should say you could set them up to require that. It wasn't mandatory, but you could enable that feature on a lot of those apps. Even our vehicle app for our car, the My Chevrolet app requires Face ID or what have you before we can use it to start the car and unlock the car and all those kinds of things. So, there are these features and functions that have been there, but now you can take any app at all that you want to, and you can lock that app. And as I've mentioned, for those who were here for this, I do it with the Wallet app because the Apple Wallet app, you can go in there and you can see my Apple Card balance, you can see my purchases, you can see my Apple Card savings account, my Apple Cash, and any other tickets or passes that I might have in there. But I think just the ones I've mentioned, that's enough to warrant protecting this app, and that was something that I didn't even think of it when they first announced it over the summer. And then when I wanted to test it out, I thought, wow, why not? What better app to lock than the wallet? And so now, anytime I open that wallet app, I have to use Face ID or the device passcode. And even to get to the Apple Pay interface, those who were here last Tuesday heard this, even to get to the screen where you can hold near reader, you have to use Face ID. So I actually have a double authentication if I want to pay for something. Um, and so I like that. So you can lock any app. All you have to do is long press on the app icon. Remember, that's a double tap and hold or a triple tap, and then you can choose the require Face ID option, or if it's a Touch ID device, I guess it'll say require Touch ID. I don't have any Touch ID devices anymore now, but I think that's what it does. And then you can do that, and of course you can go even further and you can actually hide the app so that it doesn't even show up on your home screen. But that's an additional layer if you want to do that. Um, so passcodes, biometrics, locking apps, these are the things we can do on our phones, on our iPads, on our individual devices, and we really should do them. But one of the biggest and most important things is also taking care of our Apple account, formerly known as Apple ID, because the Apple account is our gateway to everything Apple, and that means everything on our devices, right? So that is ultimately the um, that's the gate. That's the point of entry, and so it's very important that our Apple accounts are secure. And there's a couple of things I would suggest. The first is to have a very secure password. And this goes for not just your Apple account. You'll hear me reiterate this later, and I'll just refer to it as best practices for passwords, right? Every account that you have, whether it's Apple, whether it's Google, whether it's PayPal, some other store or bank or medical, whatever it is, you ought to have a different password for each account. And that password ought to be very secure, very strong. And by that, what I mean is random series of characters, right? And they're going to be different requirements for different ones. Some of them an uppercase letter, a lowercase letter, a number. Some will allow special characters. Some will require special characters. But you got to follow the guidelines and the requirements. But the more of that stuff you can have, the better. Now, in a few minutes, we're going to talk about the Passwords app, which, as Trainer Cliff pointed out, used to be called Keychain. And I think that term still exists, but really now it's all in the Passwords app. And so we're going to learn how to have the passwords. We're going to learn how to have iOS generate these really secure, really strong passwords for you so that you don't even have to create them for yourself. So in a few minutes, we're going to talk about that. But just know for right now that you should do that. So, having Rover 1 and then Rover 2 and then Rover 3, these are not good passwords, to put it bluntly, because they're actual words, and that makes them easier to figure out. You don't want to do password 123. You don't want to do anything with your name or your date of birth. These kinds of things should be avoided. Random, completely random passwords. And there's a school of thought that says, well, as long as I add enough weird stuff to it, like if I want to use my pet's name, then I'll put, Rover 123 and or something like that. Well, that's still not very secure. When we talk about very secure, we're talking about like, capital X J 7 B16D dash Y capital O, these kinds of things that are completely random, that don't seem to have any logical, which is the key thing there. They don't. And again, we're going to show you how to have these automatically generated, automatically created for you. But for right now, just know that that's really important on every kind of account, and especially your Apple account. And the second part of what I mentioned there, actually, I think it was the first part, but is having a separate password for each account. And I think this should be obvious by now, but I want to go back and explain why that's so important. It is so critical because if there ever would be, and it is, becoming less and less likely over time, but we still hear occasionally of these security breaches that companies have, and these hackings, and some of them are pretty high profile. The one I always go back to and always refer to is Home Depot, because a few years ago there was a massive data breach there, and I don't know, I'm not getting into pointing fingers or blaming it. I don't know how it happened, or what did or didn't happen to allow it to occur. But all I know is Home Depot was hacked, and a lot of customer data was stolen from that. And if you use Apple Pay, they would not have your credit card. So that's a good thing. But they still could have gotten, email address and password for your Home Depot account. Now, the problem with that is if you happen to use that same email address and password combination on other websites, now they can get into all of those websites. So if you use your Home Depot email address and password as also your Walmart, your Sam's Club, your Apple account, your Google account, your Microsoft account, well, now they're into all of those because it's the same password and it's the same username. And so this is why it is so important that you have different passwords for each account, because in the unlikely event that there ever would be a data breach on one of your accounts, at least you don't have to be concerned about the security of your other accounts. So we want to have different passwords for each account. And again, right away you might say, well, how am I supposed to remember all of those? Well, again, we're going to talk about the Passwords app in a few minutes, because then you'll know you don't have to remember those. But that is so important, having different passwords for each account and having really unique, really strong passwords. Now, the other thing that you can do with many types of accounts, and especially your Apple account, this is vital, is use two-factor authentication. Different companies, different accounts will call it different things. Apple calls it two-factor authentication. This really is not this is not something to be taken lightly. A lot of people resisted it because, especially in the voiceover community, because they were nervous about if they ever needed to enter a code, would they be able to do it? Well, the frequency that you ever have to enter that code is almost never. It basically only is required for you when you sign in a new device, and now even that's avoidable because if you use automatic setup where you hold your two devices together um, and do the quick start and transfer from one of the, you don't even need the two-factor authentication code for that. You just use one of the device passcodes. So it's really only if you set up a new device without automatic setup. If you sign in from a new web browser, you might be asked, but now even that is minimal because of passkeys, which we'll talk about. So there just aren't very many situations where you really ever actually need to use the two-factor authentication codes if you are the legitimate owner of your devices and the user of your account, you're using it legitimately. But where it is extremely beneficial is if somebody else tries to sign into your account, because what's going to happen is in the unlikely event that they figured out your username and your password, or they guessed it, now they're immediately brought up to a brick wall. They can go no further because you get a message on your trusted devices. These are devices that are already signed into your Apple account and have been verified, through the normal process of setting them up. They become trusted devices, and you will get a message on those devices saying someone in whatever city or location is trying to sign into your account. Do you want to allow it? And so if you know that they're not really trying to, nobody's trying to get in that should be, that's not legitimate, you just say don't allow, and it stops right there. Now, it is going to be highly recommended then that you change your Apple account password so that somebody doesn't keep trying it, but that's up to you. But that's going to prevent it right then and there. You say don't allow, and it will not allow it. And this actually occurred to my wife a few years ago. She got a message saying that somebody from, I don't know, somewhere in China, like Shanghai or somewhere, I don't know, was trying to get into her Apple account. So she said, don't allow. She went in and I think changed her password, and, she was fine. Praise God. This is why two-factor authentication is so important. Again, no unsinkable ships in the earthly sense, but this really drastically enhances the security of your Apple account. Because, as I said, even if somebody would figure out your password, they cannot get past that screen. If you say don't allow, it's over. They're not getting in. And then if the person is meant to get in, like if it's you trying to sign into a different web browser or a different device or something, then what's going to happen is your trusted devices will display a 6-digit code. Once you say allow, that device will display a 6-digit code that you can then enter on the computer or device that is trying to get in. And so then you can get in legitimately. And these are one-time use codes. You don't have to memorize them, save them, keep them, write them down, nothing like that. They're one-time use, and that's it. Now, let's talk about two-factor authentication a little bit more. I've explained to you how it works. I want to cover a couple other aspects of it if you are going to use, which I really highly recommend. But if you are going to use two-factor authentication, there's a couple of other things to keep in mind. The first thing to keep in mind is that if you are setting this up properly, you're going to be asked to also include at least one trusted phone number. And I think, unless they've changed it, you can have up to 5. Trusted phone numbers are phone numbers that can receive either phone calls or text messages with a code. And the benefit of this is that in the unlikely event that for some reason the 6-digit code isn't working, you don't have access to any of your trusted devices, those devices that can receive the codes, then you can still get the code by text or by a phone call. The most ideal thing to do is to have a series of trusted phone numbers here. So back to what I was saying, the best idea, as I mentioned, is to have a series of trusted phone numbers configured on your account. So here's what I have, for example. I have my own iPhone, obviously, as the first trusted phone number, right? Because I can get text messages. I also have our home phone. But then I think I have all three. I think I have my wife, my son, and my daughter now. I think I eventually added my daughter in there because when I first set that up, she didn't have an actual phone number yet, but I think I've added her since then. And my son, and I actually think I have, so maybe I'm wrong about the total number, but I actually think I have my mom in there as well. And so what I did that for was because, let's just suppose theoretically you didn't have access to any of your own trusted devices. I could say to my mom, okay, mom, there's going to be a message coming into you from Apple or a phone call. They're going to call you with a code. I need you to give me that code. So you can add these trusted phone numbers. And the most important thing that I can tell you is always make sure that you keep your trusted phone numbers up to date. If you change your phone number for some reason, or one of your contacts changes their phone number, make sure you update that in your Apple account security settings then, if it's one of your trusted phone numbers, because there is absolutely no way, when you use two-factor authentication, there is no way that Apple can reset a forgotten Apple account password. Okay, you must have the ability to fix this on your own if you need to. Otherwise, your device is going to end up being just a paperweight, or your account will be, unusable. So make sure that you keep your trusted phone numbers up to date. And that's a way that you can get back into your account if you need to, also, by getting a code sent to one of those. Now, you can also have account recovery contacts. That's another option that you can have, which allows you to designate someone as a recovery contact so that you can have codes sent to them. Again, in that situation, they don't have access to your account. They're not going to get into your account, but they're going to get the information that they need and that effectively you need in order to get back into your account if you should happen to forget your password. So that's two separate things. That's a trusted phone number for two-factor authentication, and then there's also such a thing as an account recovery contact. You can ask that person if they're willing to be a recovery contact, and you can include them in there in that manner. If I look through my password and security settings, just to give you a little bit of an idea. So this, of course, is all under settings, and then under your name, and then under sign in and security. That's what they call it now in version 18 here. Sign in and security. And so when I look under that, I have my my own phone numbers all listed here so that I know that everything's correct on my account. Then I have the option to add another email or phone number to the account. And these email and phone numbers can be used to sign in, to verify your identity, and to help recover your account. So you can have multiple, and you can sign in interchangeably with any of them, right? Then the next section here is, of course, you can change your password, but then two-factor authentication and your trusted devices and phone numbers. So we can have all that in there. And it looks, let me see if I can tell you. Two-factor authentication. You have the option of, it shows me which devices can be used to verify my account with two-factor authentication. If I keep scrolling, I have the list of trusted phone numbers. And indeed, I have our home number. I have my son. I've got my wife. I've got my mom. And it looks like I can add even more. At least the button is still available. So I don't know if I would try and it would say you've reached the limit, but I would think the button wouldn't even be available if I couldn't. So maybe I could have even more than that now. And then under here, under advanced, we have security keys. And these are physical security keys that you can actually buy, like a USB-C dongle that you have to plug in to verify your identity. So that's something that is, optional. And then if we go back out of the two-factor authentication screen, we also have recovery methods under here. And this is what I was talking about. Recovery contacts, I have 2 currently set up. And then I have a recovery key. Now, this recovery key is something that you write down. If you want to really be secure, you can print it out, you can laminate it, you can put it in a strong box, but this is a long recovery key that you can use in the unlikely event that you forget your password and all of that. So that's another option. And then there are other things here that you can look at under sign in and security as well. Legacy contacts, which we won't be really discussing today, but that is a feature that's available under there. And the automatic sign in, which is the idea that if you come up to, let's say, one of those captchas on a website, because you're authenticated with Apple, this will automatically authenticate you with your with the website that has the captcha. And this works in most situations, not all, but it does work in most of them. It does actually very well. All right. So the next thing we are going to talk about then, and remember, we will have time for questions, but this is that's the most important information I can give you there. Is make sure you have two-factor authentication set up, make sure you have a strong password, and make absolutely sure that you always keep your trusted phone numbers up to date. Always keep your trusted phone numbers up to date. All right. There were a lot of other options that I mentioned as well there. If you were taking notes or anything, account recovery contacts, a recovery key, in case you want to enter that, or also physical security keys. You can buy them, as I said. I had actually considered that, but I'm not going to do that. I had looked at it when they first introduced support for it about a year or two ago. And I think I saw one that you could buy for like $79 or something. And I think you can have up to 3 on your account, and you literally carry that key with you and plug it into your device. It either worked with, Lightning or USB-C or whatever. And that would, serve as your means of authentication. All right. So we're going to move on now, and we're going to talk about third-party accounts and different ways that Apple has given us to make things even easier and even more secure. Now, I've already mentioned to you the importance of having a different password for each account and having a really strong, unique password. This is a challenge for people if they think to themselves, how am I going to remember all these? Well, the beautiful thing is you don't have to. Apple has a passwords app. This app is available on all of your Apple devices in one form or another. And it is iCloud compatible, so it syncs across all of your devices. There are several use cases for this passwords app. The first one is that it can store all of your login credentials for your websites and apps that you have and that you visit. And so if I, go to Amazon.com and I enter my username and password, it will offer me the option of saving that into the passwords app. And with iCloud, that will be available on all of my devices. So I never have to enter it again. And we'll talk about how you actually do use it here in a moment. But it saves it in the passwords app. We also can create passwords. And this will happen automatically when you are on a website that you're trying to create a new account. You will be asked, please come up with a password and then verify that password, those kinds of things. Or I'm resetting a password on a website and it asks me, enter the new password that you want and so forth. Well, the little pop-up will appear telling you that your iPhone or your iPad can create a strong password for you so that you don't even have to do that. And depending on how the website is coded or the app, sometimes these things don't always work flawlessly, but I'd say 95% of the time or more, even they do work successfully. It works way more often than it doesn't. And what happens is it will know or it should know the requirements of the website, and it will create a strong password that complies with those requirements. And you'll find that the password it creates is perhaps 20 characters long, or 26 characters, or 18. It does a really good job of creating strong passwords, and it automatically saves them. And so they will automatically be synced with iCloud and available on all of your devices. And so this is really, really useful because I don't have to think of a strong password. It does it for me. Many, many situations, I couldn't even tell you what my password is for various accounts because it's just saved in there. Now, the Passwords app, formerly known as the Keychain, uses 128-bit military-grade encryption. So it is extremely secure, end-to-end encrypted. And the only way you can access it is with your Face ID or your device passcode or things of that nature. Even to view them, you have to do that. Another function that this app serves is to notify you about potential issues. And these issues could be anything from a weak password, a password that you've reused on multiple websites, or even passwords that have been found in a data leak. So if it knows that the website has undergone a data breach, or that it thinks this particular username and password combination is at risk, it will let you know that as well. And you can go in and tell it, that you want to create a new password. And what it'll do is it'll take you to the website to reset your password or whatever. It doesn't do it for you, but it takes you there, and then it'll create the password or whatever you want it to do. So this is, really useful for you. It will let you know about any of those issues. In addition to storing passwords for websites and apps, it also stores your Wi-Fi password. So if you ever want to look up, what the Wi-Fi password is for a certain place or whatever, that's stored in the Passwords app. And it stores some other things too, that we're going to talk about here in a moment. But those are the big things right off the top of my head. And if you run across a website or an app that doesn't automatically create this for you or automatically save it for you, you can go into the Passwords app and you can manually add additional passwords and save them and specify what website they're for, or app. If it's an app, I think it still refers to it as website name. I don't know anymore, but you can put that in there either way. If it's just add a .com or something, if you're not sure. But then what happens is when you go to that website or that app, it generally knows, and it tries to autofill that for you. And if not, it will present you with a list of passwords, and you can pick or search for the one that's correct. But again, it's not going to show you the password. It's just going to show you the username. And when you tap on it, it enters the password securely. And even those usernames are not displayed without Face ID or some form of authentication. Now, what if I have a password that needs to be shared with my family? So, for example, some of the streaming services that people use, Disney Plus and so on, you are legally allowed to share them within your household. Now, you're not supposed to share them outside your household anymore. They are cracking down on that pretty strongly, but you are allowed to share them within your own household. So, your wife, your kids, your husband, your whatever, live in the same household with you, and they want to use the same account rather than each person paying for their own, obviously. So yes, that's legal, and that's within the confines of the terms and conditions, and so you can do that. Well, the Passwords app provides a way for you to do it technically also. So, for example, I have a family group that my wife and my son and my daughter and I all belong to. And what we do is we put the passwords that everybody in the family might need to log into, like Disney Plus and like Netflix And there's probably some other ones. I think our Amazon password is in there. Some of those that everybody in the family is using, you put them in that shared group. And then Trainer Cliff and I have a group so that where we are able to do so, where we're allowed to share for certain business profiles and business accounts that Trainer Cliff and I both use, for our businesses. We can put those in there, so you can share with other people. You can do those kinds of things, and that provides the ability to invite people to that group, so that everybody has access to those passwords and so forth. And again, we're expecting you'll do it legally. We're not, trying to condemn or condone anything or get into any of that aspect of it, but just where it makes sense, where it's appropriate to do so, you can create these groups and invite people to them, and therefore the passwords in those groups can be shared. That's another feature that Apple has brought to the operating systems, to their products. And then you say, well, what about a device that maybe doesn't have a passwords app? Like, what about the Apple TV? Well, the Apple TV works with the passwords app by means of continuity, which some of is a term that Apple uses for the continuity of the products from going directly from one to the other, syncing across the board and continuing what you started on another device, pick up right where you left off, those kinds of things. And one of the continuity features is called the continuity keyboard. And so if you have an Apple TV set-top box, which, by the way, be on the lookout after Christmas for our announcement. We're going to be doing an Apple TV class again, a cafe, probably in January on that subject. But if you have an Apple TV, then it will use your iPhone, your iPad, any of your devices like that as a continuity keyboard, meaning that you can type on the iPad on screen or the iPhone on screen, and it will be entered onto your TV. And technically, that's another way of even using a Bluetooth keyboard or a Braille display, although you can pair those directly with the Apple TV. But I digress. The point I'm trying to make is that when you use the continuity keyboard, you also have the autofill option available to you, so that you can choose on your iPhone or iPad a password, and it automatically fills on your Apple TV. And so this is especially useful if you're trying to sign into Paramount Plus or Peacock or Max, or one of these apps with a password or something. You can you don't have to manually enter that. You can get it right from your iPhone or iPad, and it automatically enters. So this is a very secure way of doing these things. So that's a feature that Apple has brought as well. Now, another thing Apple is trying to work towards is the option for people to not have to use passwords at all in many situations. Now, the Apple account itself has the password, but it also has two-factor and so forth. But once you're into that Apple account, there's a lot of things that you can do. For example, sign in with Apple. And there are some others that do this. You can do sign in with Google, sign in with Facebook, sign in with Apple, of course, being the most secure and probably the most logical for an Apple user, because all you have to have is your Apple account. And once you're signed in with that, you can use this. And even on non-Apple devices, it will work. It may ask you for your Apple ID, or it may ask you to authenticate on another device or something, but it will work. And so you can sign in with Apple. And what that means for apps that support that, and there are lots of them that do now. And when you choose sign in with Apple, it will use your Apple account to sign in. And then it gives you the option of using your actual Apple account email address, or having a randomly created one just generated on the spot. And that one will forward to your actual email. So you'll still get the correspondence. But if you ever decide you don't want to receive emails from them again, you can just turn off that random email. And we're actually going to talk more about that in a moment too, because there's other ways that can be used. Now, this feature is available under settings and your name. And let's see. I think it's going to be, I want to look where this is at. Okay. It's actually just under settings and under your name. You don't have to go into sign in and security, just settings in your name. Keep scrolling past sign in and security, past payment and shipping, past iCloud and media and purchase, all these different things. And you'll see sign in with Apple. And if you go into there, you're going to see the list of apps that you've already given permission to sign in with Apple. And here are and this is the description here. It says sign in with Apple is the fast, easy, and more private way to sign into third-party apps and websites using the Apple account that you already have. And so you can learn more. And it says you can open the Passwords app to share your sign in with Apple accounts with family and close friends. So apparently you can even share, and I didn't realize that might be a new feature. Apparently even your sign in with Apple can be shared now with family and close friends. And that actually is really good to know, because there's a couple situations where, like, for example, DoorDash, where I use sign in with Apple. And I told my daughter, because sometimes when she has to stay at school for drama club rehearsals and so forth, she wants to order DoorDash or something. And I told her she'd have to create her own account and that I would give her, my credit card number. Actually, she doesn't now, because sign in with Apple, I can share that. So I don't know if I missed that and or if it really is new, which I suspected it's new because I don't remember ever seeing that before. But that's good to know. You can share your sign in with Apple accounts with family and close friends. And then I'm going to see where these are the apps and websites that I use with sign in with Apple. And some of these I might not even still use. I just may not have deleted them. Let me see if I can find ones that I actually do use. Okay, well, here's one. Bands in Town. That's a sort of like an app that shows you some of the maybe bands and singers and so forth that you like if they're going to be near you. Be My Eyes. I use sign in with Apple. Burger King, with the Burger King app, I use sign in with Apple. Canva, which is a design app and a design website, I use sign in with Apple. Chat GPT, I use sign in with Apple. Cloudflare dashboard, where I have some domains or a domain through them. DoorDash, I mentioned to you. Ember, Etsy, Grubhub, Instacart, Kayak, Kahoot, Kitchen Stories, LG ThinQ, McDonald's, Monopoly Go. I'm just looking at some of them that you might know. The New York Times, Open Table, Portable North Pole, PNP, which is a Santa app, Schwann's Home Delivery, and quite a few others. The list goes on here. Taco Bell. I mean, I can just I guess the National Theater, where we're going to see a musical here coming up. Travelocity, Trivia Crack, UPS, Uber, a few more even. I use sign in with Apple with all of these, and that means I don't have passwords specifically for those third-party apps or websites. I don't need them. I just use sign in with Apple. Now, another feature that let's see if I can I know where it is. It's in the Passwords app. I actually have to go to the Passwords app. If I do, I will see passkeys. Now, that's another thing that Apple has created called passkeys. What it is, hold on, I got this message here I need to dismiss. Okay, so what the passkeys are is they're a secure token that's placed on a device using and again, you use your biometrics, your Face ID, your device passcode, whatever, in place of a password. And so even if I were to sign in on let's say, some other device, even not an Apple device, right, I can use my iPhone or iPad with its passkey to sign in. So let me give you an idea of some of the devices that use passkeys. I'll have to open the passwords app for this one and authenticate with my face. There we go. Now, if I look at the passwords app,
42 items. Password.
I see all, which is 342 items. Passkeys, I have 8. Codes, I don't have anything saved there. Wi-Fi, I have 18. And I have shared groups, but let's go to passkeys. And okay, so these are the ones I have passkeys for. Amazon, eBay, Google, PayPal, Shopify, which I don't use anymore, but I have it. I guess I still have the passkey. SiriusXM, and so you can see that a lot of these very popular apps allow you to use passkeys, and you create a passkey, and again, that makes things even easier because you don't have to be concerned about the you don't have to have a password for those anymore. So this is a very good option. So when it's possible, use sign in with Apple, use a passkey, use these different options that are available to you. And if none of those options is available, they might still have their own 2-factor or 2-step, where you can add a text phone number or an email, and get the code. And when you receive a code, like if you're signed into your Apple account and you're trying to sign into a third-party website like Walmart or Zoom or something, where it requires a code, those will automatically show up in autofill for you. I don't know if I can get this to happen right now because I don't know if I can think of anything where it's required where I wouldn't already be signed in. Let me just take a quick look in case there is. One is coming to mind. It's Walmart Plus Travel, because I use that to book our hotel in DC when we go to this musical, but I might already be signed in, and if that's going to be the case. No, it looks like I can sign in. Okay. So the way Walmart works, they don't use a password anymore. You enter your email address, and then they email you a code that you must use, or they text you a code. I guess actually it's a text, I think, that you must use to get in. So I'm going to show you this in real time because you'll hear that I don't even have to go to my text message and copy the code or anything. It's going to be right above the keyboard as an autofill option. So let's do it. Let me
enable original sound more button, speech off.
Sign in.
Okay, you can hear this say sign in.
Sign in link.
I'm going to do that.
Sign in link. Keyboard visible image and illustration. Sign into Walmart.com with your password for opening double.
Now it thinks it's a password, but you're going to see.
Fill username button.
Notice it didn't say fill password. It said fill username, which is what I'm going to do.
Face ID authenticated.
And then I have to double tap this icon that says
by clicking continue. I agree to email at. I agree to let Walmart save my login credentials. Checked.
I have to hit that.
Continue button.
Then I hit continue, and it's going to text me.
Continue. Dimmed. Digit 1.0 and entering code in the input. Digit 2. Text field.
Now, you don't hear the text coming in because I have Do Not Disturb focus on, but I'm going to open up digit 1.
Digit 1.0 and an insertion point at end.
And I've got a keyboard. Now, you'd think, oh, I got to go get that text message, copy and paste. No. Directly above the on-screen keyboard here.
3.
Listen.
264.
There's my code, okay? And it says
from messages.
From messages. I just double tap.
Digit 6. Text field.
And
5.
It auto-filled that entire code.
Didn't receive it. Keep me signed in. Digit 6. Did keep unchecked it. Show more info. Sign in button.
So I just hit sign in.
Dimmed.
And it's loading, but I'll be signed in a moment.
You checked in December 17th. Going to.
And there's my.
Going to. 1 room, 2 travelers.
Okay, it's trying to get me to book a trip or to search for destinations, but I could also find my existing itineraries and trips and so on. But the point is, it was that easy to sign in, praise God. I didn't have to go into messages or mail and copy and paste that. I simply used the above the on-screen keyboard, the autofill where it said from messages. And notice too, what happens is that if you go to messages, you will find that the message is gone. Well, you wouldn't know necessarily, but if I look in my messages, I don't have that message from Walmart because I also have it enabled that when I receive a code and once I autofill that code, it deletes that message. And so that means I'm not getting messages that are just cluttering up my inbox or my messages app or what have you. Once the code is autofilled, it deletes. Now that's an option you can turn on or off, but I do have that turned on. So that, praise God, that you can see there's no, the message is not there because I already successfully used the code. It deleted the message and we're good to go. And so they've really, really thought these things through for you. And they work on most websites and most apps. Very rarely will you find a situation where they don't. And so the combination of Apple features and functions and then what third-party apps are doing, I always encourage, whenever it's possible, use the two-factor, even for your non-Apple accounts, right? But at the very least, use a pass key, those kinds of things. Now, there's another feature that Apple has added, and I want to talk about it for a moment, and it has to do with email addresses. If you are signing up for some kind of account, maybe, like you want to get grocery rewards or points or some other, promotion, and they ask you to enter your email address. What if you don't know that you really want to be receiving emails from this place, or you don't know for sure if you trust the place or any of these things? You can have a random email address generated at any time. And to do this, when you're asked to supply an email address, it's going to be one of the, again, above the on-screen keyboard, like above the letters U, I, and O, where the quick bar is. For those who are brand new in our voiceover class, you're going to be learning about that. For our longtime students, you already know about it. And it's the same place where we find the code that we auto-filled just a moment ago. But you'll find the option to have a randomly generated email address. And you can also do it right in the Mail app. If I compose a new message,
Toolbar, compose, button.
like so, and I
To text field is editing.
not going to do the to right now. I'm going to skip over to the from. Go to the right.
Add cc/bcc from.
So we're going to double tap that.
CC.
And then
BC from M.
we're going to go to from.
From
Now, I have a whole bunch of email addresses that I have, praise God. So I got to scroll through those first.
And hide my email. Create a random address that forwards to your inbox button.
Look at that. That's the last option in there. Hide my email. And what that's going to do is exactly what VoiceOver just described to you. It's going to create a random email address. The messages that get sent to that email address will be forwarded to your actual Apple account email address. So you are going to get the messages. But the difference is you're not giving somebody one of your actual email addresses. And then if you ever want to just turn that off at any given time, you can go in there and turn off that email address for that particular, because it's unique to each account, to each sender. So you can just turn that off. And it's as simple as that. Now, I might be incorrect here, and Trainer Cliff can correct me if I'm wrong. But I think that is an iCloud Plus feature. I think you have to have a subscription to iCloud Plus, which can be as simple as having an Apple One bundle or something. But again, I might be wrong about that. I just think I remember that Hide My Email is one of those. It may not be. And the more I'm thinking about it now, I'm doubting myself, because I know the private relay which is you can enable. It's almost like having a VPN, but you can enable a private relay in Safari. And I do think that's one of those is definitely iCloud Plus. And I think that may be the one that's actually iCloud Plus, and the other might be available to everybody. But you know what? Check it out and try it out. And iCloud Plus is a well worthwhile subscription anyway. An Apple One bundle, you may want to consider that. So that is yet another feature that Apple has created to make things more secure, more private, more, protected. Now, there is an entire section in settings, and I believe it's called security and privacy. But let me just check because I don't want to misquote it for you. And, they do change things with different versions, but I think we're looking for. Let's see. Okay. So I think it's. Yep, privacy and security. That's what they call it. And in there, you can customize so much about what each app has access to. And you'll see a list of apps that have requested different things. So, for example, if I go into privacy and security, one of the first things I see near the top, it says to me, control which apps can access your data, location, camera, and microphone, and manage safety protections. So, for example, the first thing that I have here is location services, and it tells me for always, 74 while using. That means that I have 74 apps that I have given permission, and this doesn't happen without your explicit permission. So if you are careful to read the screen, you'll know you're doing this, and you have to grant permission. I've given 4 apps permission to always have my location. I've given 74 apps to have permission to use my location while I am using the app. So let's go in here and just see some examples of what those are. And it tells me here, location services uses GPS, Bluetooth, and crowdsourced Wi-Fi hotspot and cell tower locations to determine your approximate location. Location services settings also apply to your Apple Watch. Okay, so that's good to know. So share my location is an option here that lets me pick where I'm sharing it from. And this iPhone is being used for location sharing. So one device on your account can be used for location sharing. So that's how, people know where you are if you use the Find My app with them and so on. Now, app clips, I don't have any of those right now. I did use an app clip recently to pay for a meal at a restaurant, though. Those are really cool. App clips are really fun because it actually gives you access to the app without you having to download it from the App Store. It's just a one-time use thing. Once you complete it, it goes away. So I have, let me see, like, if there's anything, okay, so, like, here's an example. I'm just going to pick some random ones. Apple Store. The Apple Store app says, requested your location with, let's see, in the past. And I have that set to while using. So when I have the Apple Store app open, it in the foreground, it will indeed be able to access my location. But then here's an app like, and I think I know what I'm looking for here specifically, Canary, which is my which is one of my indoor security cameras, and it says about Canary, requested your location within the last 24 hours, always. It's set to always. What that means is that even when I'm not using the Canary app, it can have my location, and I have granted that permission. And the reason I would want to do that is because the Canary app needs to know when I leave home, because it auto arms my cameras in away mode and it uses my phone's location. So I don't want to have to open the Canary app every time I leave home and manually switch it to away mode. I want it to automatically occur. And so for that to work, you have to always allow. So there are apps like that, like the weather app, that you probably want to always allow. And it's personal preference, but reminders, calendar, camera, weather, these kinds of apps, your security system apps, especially if they support auto arming, the Apple Home app, because that supports, location-based actions, whether it's arming or automations, geofencing, these kinds of apps you want to have always allow. Now, in addition to location services under security and privacy, or privacy and security, we have tracking, we have calendars, contacts, files and folders, focus, health, HomeKit, media, and Apple Music, passkeys access for web browsers, photos, reminders, wallet, accessories. Let's see. Oh, that's accessories, Bluetooth camera. Okay. All these different kinds of things, you can control what has access to them and which apps and which websites have access to them. And so that's under settings and privacy and security. So this is a way that you can really control who and what is accessing your data. And typically, the the App Store is very good because it's the vetting process is really good, and that means that an app in the App Store typically will do what it says. With that said, if I get an app that I know I want to use from the App Store and I know I can trust that app, I typically allow it to do what it needs to do. Now there are variants within this, even like, for example, the Voice Memos app, which is pre-installed by Apple, so certainly I trust the Voice Memos app. But a lot of times when I'm recording a voice memo, it really doesn't need my precise location. And so when you grant location access, you can even choose whether it has precise or just a more general, like does it know the town or city that you're in, or does it know the actual physical address? And so you have that choice as well when you're allowing location access. And then a similar thing like apps that will want to access your photos. Can they access all of your photos or just the photos you select manually? So you have a lot of control over these things. Who can access your contacts? What apps can access your calendar? Files and folders, music, all of these things we mentioned and more. And so you have a tremendous amount of very granular control over these things. So I would highly encourage you to spend some time taking a look at those things. Now, going hand in hand with this, of course, under settings, you can also find Apple Intelligence and SIRI. And I want to talk about how these things work, because some people are very concerned about the security and the privacy of SIRI and other smart home assistants. So let me say first and foremost that SIRI, as with anything that Apple does, is the most secure and the most focused on privacy of anybody in the industry. There's nobody that does a better or more thorough job than Apple when it comes to security of the consumers and protection of your privacy, not sharing your data, not farming your data, and also even the SIRI requests that you make, even if you choose to share them with Apple, which I do, because that then is used to improve SIRI overall. So sometimes they'll listen to my requests, and if I say I'm looking for sheets, and I mean the restaurant and convenience store sheets, SHEETZ, and if SIRI responds and says, well, here's a bedding store, because they think I'm talking about like blankets and SHEETS, the engineers will listen to that and say, oh, maybe we need to tweak that because that's not, those kinds of things. And so I do want to share my audio with Apple. But the thing about it is, even when you do that, you have the choice if you don't want to share it, by the way. But even when you do, it's anonymized. So they don't know your name. They don't know who they're listening to. And that's something that the other big smart speaker assistant, cannot say. They don't do that. Apple is the only one to anonymize its data like that, even the audio data. So that's very, very important to know that Apple is ahead of the game there on that. But even with Alexa and Google, all of these, there's a tremendous amount of focus on security and privacy. And what I would really want to focus on is that people will try to say, because, the question always was, is SIRI listening in? Is Alexa listening to me when and right away people in the tech industry came back and said, well, no, it only listens when you say the wake word. But then somebody realized, hold on, in order for it to know I've said the wake word, it has to be listening. So what happened there was that the tech industry wasn't lying. They were just trying to allay people's fears, but they oversimplified it, and they needed to go back and clarify what's actually happening. So essentially, this is what's happening. Your smart speakers, yes, unless you turn off the microphones physically, they can always hear you. and your iOS devices, if you keep them face down, are not listening to you by default. You can change that setting, but if they're face up, they're listening, especially if they're unlocked, they're listening. But all the data that you speak, all the conversations that you're having, everything like me talking right now, my devices just totally throw that out instantly. I don't know how often that purge happens, but it's probably multiple times every second. I thought I heard somewhere where it's like 8 times a second or something like that. But, even if it's every few seconds, they're constantly getting rid of. It's just basically like a stream. It's just like a flow straight through and it just passes through and it's gone. The only time they stop that purge and they actually start truly, quote unquote, listening is when you say their wake word. So if I say SIRI or ALEXA, then it's going to use those requests. Now, Apple is going to process a good many of those requests on device and not even send it up to the cloud. But if it has to, it will send some data to the cloud. And especially in the soon to be released 18.2, if it needs to send to like ChatGPT, it will ask you first, and it will ask you if that's okay. And so there's always, again, you have a lot of control over this, but it's not spying on you, definitely, and it really isn't even listening. I mean, technically it's listening because it has to know when you say the wake word, but again, all that data is just immediately thrown out and disposed of. And so you have nothing to be concerned about in those situations. That's a little bit about SIRI and the other smart assistants as well. And then the only other thing I would point out, some other sort of common sense things to keep in mind are the following. Number one, please be careful when you are downloading files and opening attachments. Okay? I don't do this unless I am very comfortable with the website that I am using or the email that contains an attachment, And if you don't know that somebody has, usually people are going to tell you, hey, I sent you an email with an attachment or something like that. If you're not 100% sure, don't open it. It is not worth the risk, okay? And files, make sure you're downloading from a reputable source. When it comes to apps, absolutely, App Store is the way to go. There is and I don't want to get on a whole soapbox here because I could do an entire session on this and beyond because it's something very, very important to me, and I will tell anybody that will listen, and probably people who would even rather not listen, but I will tell anybody that I can how important it is to use the App Store and how much the App Store is helping us, because there are a lot of places, and I absolutely pray for our government and I submit to my authorities as God commands us to do, but there is communication with that, and I think the government officials who want to, refer to the App Store as harmful or a monopoly or whatever, I think they got it wrong. I think they're missing the big picture. And part of what I think they're missing is that it's going to be way more harmful to consumers if you allow people to step outside of that ecosystem. And people say, but it's a free country. Yes, people have the freedom to not use an Apple product. If they don't want that kind of security and protection, they can go Android, they can go Windows, they can go, some other company somewhere. They don't have to do that. That's the free country part of it. But when you choose Apple, you're making a choice to allow extra protection, right? You're making a choice to have the security that comes with the App Store being the only way to install apps. Technically, it's not the only way, but basically for most people, the only way to install apps onto your device. And there's something to be said for that. There's something to be said for not just swimming in the open waters that are sometimes very shark infested, right? When it comes to, look at what has happened to Windows, right? Windows is, quite frankly, a cesspool of viruses and those kinds of things. But it doesn't have to be, because Microsoft has an app store too now. And so if people stay, although I'm not even sure that their app store is as secure as Apple's, but if people stay within the confines of that, at least they know that what they are getting now is verified. And this is why the App Store is so wonderful. And even as a Mac user, where you don't have to stay in the App Store, I recommend that you do. I really do. Now, we have a couple exceptions. I say that, but, here's Trainer Cliff and myself using apps from Rogue Amoeba that happen to not be in the App Store. But we trust those app developers. We've talked to them individually, and we've gotten responses from them, and we know their product. And so, yeah, there might be times when it is appropriate to install something third party, not App Store, on your Mac. But really and truly, most of the time, I don't recommend that. And certainly with iOS and iPadOS, tvOS, don't jailbreak your device. Don't do something like that. You're only asking for trouble. The benefits do not outweigh the risks. The App Store is a secure place to get your apps. And if you ever do need to download files that are not in the App Store, media files or otherwise, just make sure, absolutely sure, that you know and trust the source of those before you begin the process. And again, with emails, I just want to cycle back to that. Don't open attachments unless you are 100% certain that they are from who they say that they're from and that you know and trust that person. And the other thing, in addition to this, that I want to point out is if you ever receive a phone call, an email, or a text message telling you that your Apple account has been compromised, that your Comcast account is about to be shut down because of suspicious activity, that you are in trouble with the IRS for tax evasion or something like that, never respond to these. These are all scams 100% of the time. They will not contact you like that. Apple, your cell phone carrier, your credit card company, they will not, repeat, not contact you like that. Do not click on their links. I got one yesterday from Apple, and the message said it was from iCloud Team. That was the name of the email, and it said, "Oh, there's been suspicious activity. Your Apple account has been locked, and if you don't want to permanently lose access to it, you need to." And what they wanted me to do was scan a QR code. They didn't even have a link for me to click on. They said, "Scan this QR code from a device, and it will take you right to the place where you can authenticate your account." Of course it will. Scammer. It's a scam. And people want you, what they're trying to get you to do is enter your, credit card, your social security, something that you think, and this is how the hackers get stuff. And I actually have a cousin who just had a Verizon Wireless account opened in his name. He doesn't even use Verizon Wireless, but somebody had gotten his social security number, got into his account, and I don't think it was anything he did. I think, sometimes there have been high-profile hackings, and I think his was, that situation, and they got his, and he had to go to the police because he calls Verizon and says, "Look, I am the person that allegedly opened this account, but it was opened in my name. It wasn't really me. I need you to close the account." And Verizon says, "Well, I don't know you. How do I know you're not the scammer? So if you really are the one who's been harmed by this, you need to go to the police." So he had to actually file a police report. He had to, go through a lot of stuff. Praise God, everything's okay now. But, he was starting to get cell phone bills in his name that he didn't open. These are scams, folks. These do not. And then, "Oh, your device has been infected. We've detected 3,000 viruses on your account. Click this link and we will help you fix it." Don't ever do that. Those are scams all the way, 100% of the time, folks. Without exception, those are scams. That will never happen. Now, if you see something that you think might legitimately be a concern, because once or twice I couldn't tell. Usually you can look for key things like misspellings. They'll say something goofy, and it'll just be wrong. It's misspelled, or you can tell that it's scanned in. I don't know that those of you who are totally blind like me realize this, but the letters R and N put together also can look like an M. And I had an email one time that claimed to be from Comcast, and it was, somebody who saw it might have thought it was legitimate, but VoiceOver said to me, Corncast. It said your Corncast account is going to be. And I said to my wife, I said, how would they ever think anybody wouldn't see that? Because usually it's more subtle. It's a misspelling or it's a different web address, but it sometimes is way more difficult to spot than that. And I said, how would they have ever thought that you'd get by that one and not realize that it's Corncast? And she said, well, because when you see an R and an N together, they look like an M. She said, so people must have just expected that the mind would fill that in and, confirmation bias, and there you go. Of course, praise God, VoiceOver said, and I knew it was a scam, but, just be on the lookout for those because there are some key things. But here's the thing. If you ever get one that you're really not sure, because I had gotten one from PayPal one time that really looked legitimate to me, but I still had my doubts because I just couldn't believe it was true. If that ever happens, go to the actual legitimate website like paypal.com, get their actual phone number or contact information and contact them and ask them if there is anything to be concerned about with your account. That's the way you'll know for sure if it is correct, if you have any doubts at all. But again, you're almost always going to find, probably always going to find that they are scams. And no, AT&T did not select you to win $10,000, right? That just doesn't happen. We even have it with our Easy Pass on the Turnpike. You get this, there's a fine. You have an unpaid toll and we need to, have you click this link to pay. Even that's a scam. And so just be aware of this. Be very wise about this and on the lookout for it. Because people are trying all the time to do this. And then here's the other one, just as a little extra tip. It's not directly related to your technology, but if you get a phone call and they ask if they're speaking with so-and-so, never use the word YES. Never say that because they will record that and use that to get permission from you to do other things. So don't use that word. When somebody says that and I believe it's a scam, I just say, who's calling? And you can find out pretty quickly what's really happening. Be aware of this. And a lot of the phone carriers now will notify you of potential spam right in the caller ID. And some of them even have, spam blocking protection. And then you can actually choose the silence unknown callers option in your settings. I don't do that because given the fact that I have a business, I get a lot of calls that may not be in my contacts, but that is an option for people. I mean, they still could leave a message, so, I guess I could do that, but just some things you can do. And so we're going to go to the other instructors and to your questions, but I just want to cycle back, as I promised you I would, to where we started, which is that there are no 100% unsinkable ships in the earthly sense, right? We trust God, but there are some things that we can do. I've shared them with you. And at the end of the day, you have to decide, right? Your data is out there. And, we always tell our kids, don't put stuff online that you may someday regret, because 10 years down the road, job interview or something, you don't know what people might find. I mean, look at politicians. You find skeletons in their closets, as it were, from, 20, 30 years ago that they wish they could take back. And, my philosophy is none of us is perfect. What did I say 20 years ago that I would prefer people didn't know that I said, but it just try to be aware of that because your data is out there. If you use technology at all, it's going to be out there. The thing to do is to remember that you have to decide if it's worth it. And I believe it is in a lot of ways. You can do these things to keep protected, to enhance that level of protection, and use common sense with this. And I think you'll find that it's possible to stay safe in this digital world. And
Thanks for joining today's session. Didn't get your question answered? Want a free consultation or some paid one-on-one training? Email us at support@ttjtech.biz or support@stiritup.com. And remember, stir is spelled with a U. That's STURITUP.com.
or check out our websites for additional free resources. That's ttjtech.biz or stiritup.com. I'm Trainer Cliff. Thanks for joining us. God bless. See you next time.